Podcast Movie Barbie, a Barbie binging to welcome, else everyone and ages all of Chelsea's, Kens and Barbies, gentlemen and ladies. I'm your host, Jay, and with me I have my co-host. To get anywhere in this podcast, you need to be a fresh-faced protagonist, and you, my friend, are fresh as a daisy.
I am. Thank you for noticing. I smell fresh too.
I do too. I just took a shower.
So did I.
Yep. You are playing the role of the co-host. Or I guess you would be the host in this episode.
I guess.
Because that's, there are multiple hosts, but you're the real host.
We all know that.
Anyway, for those of you just joining us, we are normally a podcast about Barbie movies, but this week we are launching our new season called Considering Christopher, a Christopher Nolan movie podcast. We will be covering the films of Christopher Nolan, but we will be doing it Memento style. So we're starting at the end and moving towards the beginning. Starting with Tenet. We already covered Oppenheimer a couple weeks ago, but yeah, we're diving in with his most recent besides Oppenheimer here.
Yeah, that involves going backwards and inverting,
That's my poor attempt at an intro there.
Yes.
That made no sense.
It's Memento style too.
Yeah. So yeah, but before we dive in, I think we should probably give some of our Christopher Nolan history.
Yes, okay.
Since we're starting a new series here.
All right.
So why don't you go first?
Why don't I go first? See, I didn't really know about Christopher Nolan until really I met you, but I started watching his quote-unquote films with his Batman trilogy. So I just like Batman, and so I watched his films because he did Batman. And it wasn't really until I met you in middle school, and you back then loved Nolan. You would constantly talk about Nolan. In English class, our professor really liked the movie Inception. He'd always mention it in class, so that's kind of how I got into that. But yeah, it wasn't really until Interstellar where I got onto the Nolan bandwagon, and we'll get to that when we get to that film. So
yeah, Nolan was definitely an early director for me. I think the first director to have more than like a couple movies where I had seen all of his movies. I did that back when we were seniors in high school, I think, where I bought all of the DVDs and watched through all of them.
I mean, yeah. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. I think I forget which the first Nolan movie I saw was. I think it might have been Inception. And then saw the Dark Knight trilogy, of course. I think The Prestige I saw after that.
At some point I saw The Prestige around the time it came out. I don't remember.
Okay.
But I remember the opening where he's drowning. His wife drowning. That's spoilers for that film, if you hadn't seen that, by the way. But
for the first scene.
Yes, for the first opening. That's what I remembered vividly when my parents watched it in the living room.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly. I think the next one I would have seen would have been Interstellar, which we saw, of course, in the theater together.
We did, yeah. We saw a lot of films in theater that year.
Yeah, 2014.
I love that year for movies. We went a lot.
Yeah, I think after that was when I went back and watched, of course, Following and Memento and Insomnia is probably one I'm missing in there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and then Dunkirk I saw in theaters after we graduated from high school.
Yeah, I've watched all of his films in theaters since Interstellar.
Okay.
Actually, no, since Dark Knight Rises, technically.
Okay. I've only since Interstellar, though, with the caveat that I saw Tenet not in actual theater, but in
a dollar theater. Or
college I went no the college I went to had an auditorium and we would show movies, and so
yeah, I
that's what I
saw
saw.
Tenet in a dollar theater. COVID was a wild time for sure,
Yeah.
but what one thing I did really like is that they released the films both in the regular theater and the dollar theater, and you could and they didn't even change the price. It was like dollar theater pricing. Oh, that's great! I can watch this film that just came out at this bargain of a price, and that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't see it until it came out on digital, and then my school was showing it a couple months later, so that's when I saw it in a theater. This is actually I've seen Tenet 4 times now.
Yeah, 4 or 5 times for me as well.
Yeah. But yeah, this was released back in August 2020 in the
Uh,
UK and September 3 in the US.
mm-hmm.
Of course, a very contentious time with not a lot of people going to the movie theaters.
For reasons, yep.
Yep. This is Christopher Nolan's 11th film. Um, and it stars John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, and Kenneth Branagh. We have cinematography by Hoyte van Hoytema, who did Dunkirk and Oppenheimer as well. And then score by Ludwig Göransson, who did
Black
Oppenheimer.
Panther and the Mandalorian.
Yeah. And yeah, Nolan actually had the idea for Tenet back near the beginning of his career. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, as he was working on Memento, this was kind of an idea he had. But he didn't start actually working on the screenplay until 2014, and it took him several years after that to work out all of the plot and the
Interesting.
weirdness of the stuff. And yeah, this is a true international production. They were filming in the US, UK, Italy, Estonia, India, Denmark, and Norway, and
Yep.
also a very stunt heavy production, including some very complex reverse stunt performing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People walking backwards to make it look like they're walking forwards when you reverse the footage.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, quite the complicated movie.
Yeah. Very complicated. Like Nolan in general. But this one is especially complicated, even in
Yeah,
rewatches.
yeah, it's a difficult thing to wrap your mind around, the sort of the time stuff.
Like
And
even
even
when you have people explain it to you after the fact. Like you have a physicist explain how the timeline thing works. It still doesn't make any sense. We'll get to that later on,
yeah.
but it is very complicated. Probably one of the most complicated that he's done.
Well, yeah. And on that note, I tried to sort of simplify the story for our summary here, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll see how well I did. So we have the main character is just called the protagonist. He's
Uh huh.
never given a name.
Uh huh.
But he's a CRA operative on a mission in Ukraine when his team is compromised. And rather than reveal any information under torture, he takes a cyanide pill, but he wakes up weeks later on a ship. Turns out the pill was a fake, but his willingness to sacrifice himself for his team has qualified him for the mysterious program known only as Tenet.
Mm.
And it turns out he finds out that there are people in the future who discovered a way to reverse the entropy of objects, which sends them backwards in time. Um,
Yep.
and they've been discovering more and more of these objects, and now this organization Tenet is trying to figure out what's going on here and how can they stop any potential issues.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the protagonist sees some inverted bullets and has them tested to try and figure out who is supplying them, and it leads back to an arms dealer in India. um, so he recruits Neil, who's a handler played by Robert Pattinson, to help him get into the arms dealer apartment. But upon getting inside, he finds out that the arms dealer's wife, Priya, is actually the one pulling all the strings here, and she's also a part of Tenet. And she tells him to seek out a Russian arms dealer named Sator. So the protagonist meets with Sator's wife, Kat, who is a prominent art dealer. Um, he finds out that she actually appraised a painting and then sold it to her husband, knowing it was fake. So he tries to blackmail her with that information. But Kat reveals that Sator already knows and is using the painting as leverage over her, as well as her son, threatening that if she leaves him, she won't get to see her son again. So to win her over, the protagonist and Neil decide to steal the painting from Sator's vault in a free port in Oslo. They successfully infiltrate it, but instead of the painting, they find a device for inverting people and objects, sending them backwards in time. Um, so they go back to Mumbai, and Priya reveals that Sator is looking for plutonium 241. And so the protagonist comes up with this plan to get close to Sator and get try and figure out what's going on with Sator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he once again goes to Kat and lies about having destroyed the painting. Um, and eventually, Sator's a bit antagonistic at first, but eventually the protagonist is able to um, win him over by first suggesting he can help them find the plutonium and later saving him when Kat tries to murder him while they're out sailing. Sator and Kat have a very contentious relationship. The operation to get the plutonium goes well until an inverted Sator shows up with Kat as a hostage and demands the plutonium. Um, just at that moment, an inverted car drives past, and the protagonist throws the plutonium into it, throwing the empty case to Sator. But Sator's men take the protagonist hostage and shoot Kat with an inverted round to get him to tell Sator where they hid the plutonium. Sator disappears into a turnstile, and a team working with Tenet show up to rescue the protagonist. And Kat, because of the inverted bullet, it's more dangerous for some reason. And so they have to take her through the turnstile. And while they're sort of getting her situated, the protagonist goes back through the operation in reverse to try and get the plutonium back. Turns out he was the one driving the inverted car that he threw the plutonium into. But Sator has already beat him to the plutonium. And it turns out that it isn't actually plutonium, but is one part of an algorithm that can reverse the flow of time for the entire world,
Mm-hmm.
which would theoretically end the world. And Sator has been coordinating with the future. They want to reverse time to get back to a world not ravaged by climate change. Um, so the protagonist is able to figure out where Sator plans to hide this algorithm so that it can be discovered in the future. He's going to bury it with a bomb. So the protagonist devises a temporal pincer movement where they're going to send two teams, one going forward, one going backward, try and stop or get the algorithm out before the bomb goes off. Meanwhile, Kat gets sent back to Sator's yacht in Vietnam. He has a kill switch set up because he's dying of cancer. So he plans to die on his yacht, and that will trigger the kill switch and send out an email letting the future know where the algorithm is. Um, but the protagonist finds the algorithm but gets trapped by one of Sator's men, and an inverted person picks the lock and takes a bullet for the protagonist. Meanwhile, Kat, not wanting Sator to feel like he has won, decides to kill him, even though she doesn't know if the protagonist has the algorithm yet. Um, but luckily, doesn't end the world because with the help of Neil, the protagonist is able to save the algorithm. Neil realizes that he was the inverted person who saved the protagonist, who picked the lock, and goes back to invert himself, even though he knows he will die. And he reveals that he was recruited by the protagonist years ago, and that the protagonist has a future in the past. And then sometime later, Priya is planning to kill Kat in order to tie up loose ends. but instead the protagonist shows up and kills her and reveals that he was the one behind Tenet this whole time. His future self has been pulling all of the strings. Yeah. But one of our longest plot descriptions ever there.
It is a bizarre plot.
Yeah, and there's so much stuff to it.
Stuff. That's a good explanation for it.
Yeah. I was reading a review on RogerEbert.com, I believe Brian Telerico, who said that estimated that about 2 hours worth of this movie, it's a 2.5 hour movie, about 2 hours of that is exposition.
I can believe it.
Yeah, there's just so much plot.
There's so much
And
to unpack. There's so much plot, and what makes it worse is that you can barely hear the plot.
yeah, the we'll get to the sound mixing, but yeah, that
Yep.
it's you see the thing is I like this concept of like going backwards and forwards in time and these people doing weird things and like temporal pincer movements. And one of my favorite video game series is the Zero Escape series, and that's all about sort of weird time stuff, and I love it.
Hmm.
But the thing is, there they've done a very rigorous job of like making sure the logic works out and that it's communicated to the audience. Here it's just kind of like,
I have this cool concept. Here's how it looks visually. There's your film.
yeah, it's spectacle over sort of coherence.
Yeah. It's also one of those things that is much better when you watch it the first time, but like the more we rewatch this film, I think we enjoy it less and less. Um,
Okay, I was curious if that was your experience because I know you like this one more than I do.
yeah, I like it more than you do, but I can admit, like, I I enjoyed it semi more the second time because now I figured it all out. But then, like each other time, the whole allure of the spectacle, which was really what kept you in, because the whole concept is just
Yeah.
too mind-boggling to keep track of. It starts to fade down on you, and you're just like, okay, I don't really care as much as I
Yeah.
should, which is really the heart of the problem with this film, is that there's really no heart of the characters.
Yeah. There's an early line when the protagonist is first learning about this sort of inversion and trying to figure it out and wrap his mind around it. And one of the characters says, "Don't try to understand it, feel it." And I think that is an interesting thesis for the movie because I actually like that kind of just like suspension of disbelief. Let's not worry too
Yeah,
much about the mechanics. The problem is most of the movie is trying to explain the mechanics of it, so we never really get to feel it.
yeah. So like, yeah, it's also like once you're done watching the film and get the spectacle, like every time, every rewatch, you're picking it apart. And
Yeah.
you start thinking more and more about the mechanics. The mechanics don't make sense.
Yeah.
Even though they have explained it, it doesn't make any sense. For instance, this whole one part where he throws that little, the quote unquote, the 241 into the other car. He saw himself in that other car. That's why he threw it in there.
Yeah.
But he forgets that it's there when he goes back around. And the villains get it because of that.
Yeah.
There's like loops of logic and kind of quote unquote plot holes. There really are plot holes. That's a plot hole where it's like, why did he throw it in the car if he didn't know that was him? And if it was him,
Yeah.
what happened? Did you did you
Yeah.
forget? What the whole, like there's this whole part where Sater, he's inverted. He's in an inverted car, but his wife is not inverted.
Yeah.
Like, how does that picture for her? Like, what does this? It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. Visually,
Yeah.
it looks cool and interesting, and that's really what you're here for. But after like the fourth or fifth time, it's like, okay, yeah, looks cool, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think for me, I was noticing this time there's just like a level of comprehension that it's kind of, you can't get above a certain level of comprehension with this because it isn't. I mean, potentially it's theoretically possible, but it's not something we have any frame of reference for. So it's
Theoretically,
very hard to like wrap your mind around it. But as a result, like each time I watch it, I'm less and less interested in the mechanics of it. But the movie is so interested in explaining the mechanics of it that like there isn't any story outside of those, or the story outside of those mechanics isn't very interesting. You know, I think of something like Inception. Inception spends a lot of the movie explaining how the dreams work and how everything works.
but you get
But
it.
yeah, and then you get to a certain point and the story takes over, and now, you know, here we've explained all the mechanics. Now we can just focus on, here's the story, here's the emotional through line, here's the characters. This one you get to that point, but it's the last like 15 minutes.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's just, for me it's just not enough. It feels like Nolan was doing the bare minimum on an emotional level in order to focus more on the mechanics. But
Right.
as a result, there's not much emotion here.
Right. I also, when looking at this, I keep imagining a much more interesting film because they're talking about like the future. They're trying to kill us. And I'm like, you know what? It'd be interesting to see the future try to kill us. Like,
Yeah.
what about their perspective? Can we see that future side wanting to kill us? What's their struggle? It's like, no, we're told that potentially that's what it is, but we don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's another thing about the plot. Going through the plot description, even just reading it back, one thing I realized is that there are so many points in this movie where you discover that a piece of information you have been given as the audience is false. So, you know, there's the, oh, we're going to use the painting to blackmail Cat. Oh, but Seder already knows about that. Oh, we're going to destroy the painting. No, it's not actually destroyed. Oh, here's the plutonium. No, it's not actually plutonium. And it's like, yeah, there's like, it's hard to keep track of everything the movie wants you to keep track of.
Hmm.
And there's also no reward for keeping track of it. Like, you haven't solved the puzzle box because there isn't much inside the puzzle box. It's just the puzzle box.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think for me the biggest problem is that we have two interesting emotional hooks that get almost completely ignored. The first one gets maybe two scenes, and that's Kat's relationship with her son and with Seder.
Mm.
Um, that's sort of her motivation. She's the character with the most emotional tie to the conflict here, through her son and through her relationship with Seder. We see her son twice and he has no lines, I don't think. Like he's not a character, he's a plot device.
Right. Unless you follow the theory that maybe Neil was actually the son, because they're
Yeah,
both
I don't
blonde.
follow that theory. I don't I don't think that tracks, but
I
sure.
mean, it makes the film more interesting. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, speaking of Neil, the other interesting hook is this friendship between Neil and the protagonist.
Oh yes.
But the problem is Neil is gone for like the entire second act.
Yeah, and by the time you get to the end, where like, oh, Neil dying, that's supposed to be sad, and yes, it's sad because I actually like Neil.
Yeah.
Like, I'm supposed to feel for the protagonist's sad reaction to this. It doesn't work as strongly.
No.
Which we'll talk about the protagonist and this sort of hero with no character slash name once we get into
Yeah.
the characters. But there's a way to make that work. that this film, I think, doesn't, because they make him care at the end when they really shouldn't.
Yeah, I feel like I wish this were either a um I wish this were either Kat's movie, just like she's the protagonist here, and the protagonist shows up and is like this weird mysterious guy, and but it's told from her perspective.
So
So
yeah,
we
so
don't
like a normal person without any of the CIA skills
yeah.
is thrown into this whole thing.
Yeah.
So like an anime. Um,
I mean, I, I
it,
think with a little bit more with the protagonist, he needs a name. With
uh,
John David Washington's character as like a this mysterious figure who you're not quite sure if you can trust him or not, the way that Cat sees him. Or I think it could also work if it's more of a like buddy movie with the protagonist and Neil. So have them meet up in India, but then have them stay together. You know, they
right.
both end up on the yacht. They're both sort of interacting and bouncing off of each other and do more of a buddy movie. And then that relationship has more of an emotional impact in the
Mm,
end.
yeah, because as it stands, not much of the motion stands except for Kat, and
Yeah.
she's barely a part of this film.
Well, she's in it more than I remembered, but
She's like a
she's
third of the film,
yeah.
maybe.
And she doesn't have a ton of agency. She spends most of the movie like either being kidnapped or
Being
shot
surprised that
by
the
a bullet
protagonist is
or
actually more
yeah,
competent than he seems.
yeah. But she just doesn't like she spends so much of the movie not able to make decisions for herself,
Except when he shoots the guy to the end.
which is her big moment. And that's where the character arc or where her character and where the movie really works
Hmm.
is when it kind of gives us that catharsis and the thing where she shoots him knowing fully well that it might end the world, but she just can't not do that. And it's this big moment, and I think it's no, Nolan isn't known for his women characters being particularly deep or interesting, but that's one of those moments where I'm like, yeah, that should be the catharsis of the movie. That should be the climax. That should be the big emotional moment. But because she's not the focal character, it's just kind of like whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this stems back to I think this is Nolan's attempt at making a James Bond movie. And this is something that a lot of people have pointed out, where you have the globe trotting, you have the slightly over the top villain, you have the gadgets and the weird sci-fi stuff. But it's Nolanized. It's you focus in on the mechanics of the time travel and all of that.
Right, yeah. And you don't necessarily have the charm of the James Bond himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll get into that with the characters, but yeah. And I think it is interesting. There's rumors going around that Nolan might direct the next James Bond movie. And I think that would be interesting, but I do hope that if he does, they get someone else to co-write with him
Oh, yeah.
to get that James Bond sort of. James Bond is a very particular character, and Nolan hasn't ever pulled that character off well.
Right. Like, Nolan films, their best writing is when his brother is involved.
Yeah, although I think Oppenheimer is significantly better than this or than Dunkirk.
Right. But the main fallings is with his female characters in that film.
Yeah, which is a consistent issue across his films, which we'll be getting into probably quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, for me, my overall thoughts on this are that it starts strong. The first sequence is actually really interesting, where you have this opera siege, and then you have the torture scene, and the protagonist choosing the cyanide pill. Now, my sort of restructuring of this is, what if you have that scene and then you cut to Kat, and then it's told from Kat's perspective, and then maybe you flash back to some of the protagonist stuff. But
Right. Thinking on Nolan films, I don't like a lot of the way that he starts his films,
okay,
because they tend just to be confusing. Like Oppenheimer,
yeah,
you're thrown into so much. You're thrown into three different time periods. Here, you're thrown into this opera thing,
yeah,
which for the most part doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the film until the end, where it's like, "Do you like opera?" It's like, "What? That was a part of it."
well, because the plutonium was at the opera.
Sure, but like, it's like a separate thing,
Yeah,
like to the protagonist. Like he has no idea. The audience has no idea what's going on,
yeah,
and like you're not gonna have any idea unless you make that connection, which
yeah,
typically you don't, because you're so far ahead of the movie later on that you've forgotten about the opera section. But
yeah.
it's still a cool sequence. Just doesn't really do much.
Yeah, this is actually the reason I bring up the sequence is that I actually got to see the sequence in IMAX, because they released it in front of the last Star Wars movie,
Mm.
which I saw in IMAX, and then before it they played the Tenet stuff, and then I'm like, oh, I want to see that in IMAX, and then didn't end up getting to see it in IMAX.
Weren't you actually excited for this film before it came out?
I was very excited for this. I don't remember when I think once the reviews started to come in, and it, because even back 3 years ago, but especially in the time since, I've started to kind of mellow a bit on Nolan. I think after Dunkirk was when it really started, where I started to see more of the flaws in his movie, and a lot of the like. I don't know. I like stories with good emotional cores. And Dunkirk doesn't quite have that. And then when I was hearing reviews about Tenet, then I was a little less excited about that. And then also some of Nolan's comments at the time were rubbed me the wrong way, where he was encouraging people to go to the theater, obviously because he had a movie in theaters, but it was not a time where it was particularly safe to go to the theater.
Sure.
Um, and there's examples of other directors who were like, hey, our movie is coming out, but don't go and see it in the theater, we didn't have a choice here.
Hmm.
Whereas Nolan was very involved in that. And yeah,
Yeah. I don't think
so
I
yeah,
was
that
ever excited for this film beforehand. I
okay.
know that you were. You were telling me about it, and I was like, I don't really care. Like the trailer didn't look interesting. I I don't really know what it is until I actually watched it and was like, oh okay, I kind of enjoyed this.
Yeah, yeah, I don't remember, at a certain point I wasn't excited for it, but yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly care for it. I do also know that, like, anyone who is into sort of those like puzzle box movies are going to get more out of this than I did.
Hmm.
But yeah, for me, especially fourth time around, I've given this movie 4 times to watch it, and it still hasn't. Each time, I'm less and less invested in the story, because it's like, oh yeah, this goes nowhere. There's no emotional
Right.
catharsis.
Yeah.
So yeah, I gave the story here a 2 out of 5. Maybe a bit harsh, but we're going with it.
Yeah, I give the story a 3 because of the same reason. Each time I watch it, it's like, okay, it's less and less, but it's still enjoyable for just like turn off your
Yeah.
brain, watch the pretty
You see, I,
visuals.
I I like that kind of thing usually, but for me, because so much of the movie is exposition about the mechanics
Yeah.
of stuff, I have trouble not engaging with it on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will also say, like, there might be something that I'm missing. Like, it took me years to figure out the like true meaning behind Inception, which we'll talk about in a few episodes here.
Okay.
So maybe there's something I'm missing, but with this one, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like there's that same depth to it,
Right. I'd
sort of
still
thematically.
recommend. I would still recommend the film for like a first time watch. But besides
Yeah.
that, it'd be like in the bottom of the list for a first time watch. But I would
Yeah.
still recommend it if you wanted something
It
mind
is
blowing.
it is an interesting movie, and I'm glad it exists. I don't care for it, but
Oh, right. So I can see where the idea for Oppenheimer came from. Because there's a
yes.
moment in this film where they're talking about Oppenheimer. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And do you know the story behind how that led to Oppenheimer?
Go ahead.
Because Robert Pattinson gave Christopher Nolan the American Prometheus book because he read that part of the script and was like, "Hey, you might like this since you were talking about Oppenheimer." And Nolan read it and liked it enough that he decided to make a movie about it.
Cool.
So yeah, this is kind of directly leading into Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I mean, that's another point where it's like the interesting story would have been that scientist who made this time bomb who
Yeah,
killed herself because of it.
which to be fair, he then made Oppenheimer, which is not that exact story, but that's what that story is referencing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, next up we have the characters.
Oh boy.
The protagonist, as I've said, I don't think he makes for a particularly compelling main character. He doesn't have any emotional stakes in the story. It's just like a generic. He wants to save the world. There's no one there. There's like a little bit of like a flirtationship between him and Kat, but that never feels like it's his main motivation. Like it just kind of feels like, oh, he kind of likes her, but not in a way that is ever consummated in any meaningful way.
Yeah, so far he's doing this thing just because it's his job.
Yeah, which doesn't make for a particularly interesting story. Like you think of other Nolan films and other Nolan protagonists, and they tend to have emotional reasons behind why they're involved in the story. You think of Inception, and you have Cobb, who wants to get back to his kids, and it's through that sort of personal stakes that then the audience gets invested in the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, there isn't that personal connection. There's no the conflict isn't emotional, except for Kat, but Kat is kind of off to the side.
And I think a character like his could work, and it has worked. The most famous example of this character, who doesn't really have a doesn't really have a name.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with him being called the protagonist. I know that you don't really care for that, but the most
Well,
famous example of something like this working is Clint Eastwood's cowboy character from the Good and the Bad and the Ugly trilogy. But there, he does have a motivation. And that motivation is money.
yeah,
But like, he doesn't really change throughout the film. He has this one goal, in each film, he does what he does to get that goal. But he's still the same character in each one. He doesn't have the name, and he's mysterious and he has his personality, and that could work for the protagonist here. But yeah, he is just there.
Yeah. He's very much a blank slate in a way that like video game protagonists often are.
And
And I
that's
should say,
fine. It was fine
yeah,
for me. Like I could just watch it and like not really care. But yeah, if you're like really craving that character from your main protagonist, then it's fine. But yeah, your comparison to video game characters does make sense. That does work really well.
yeah. And I don't dislike that he's called the protagonist. I just think it makes it difficult when we're having a discussion like this. But yeah, just uh, not much of a character going on there. And we were talking about sort of the similarities to James Bond, and all of the sort of charmingness of this character is John David Washington's performance.
Sure.
It's not on the page.
Yeah, James Bond, like he doesn't really. If you really think about his older films, he doesn't
Yeah.
really have any motivation except that there's a pretty girl. I want to sleep with her. That's it.
Yeah. Which
Here,
is kind of his thing, but it's like he's not suave enough to get us invested. No, I'm not a huge James Bond fan. I'm more of a Skyfall fan than a James Bond fan. But yeah, I think James Pond. I think those movies pull it off a little bit better.
yeah, yeah, those characters who are in it for the job versus the emotional heart
Yeah,
of why he's doing the job.
and it also helps that most of the early James Bond movies are shorter than this
True.
and less exposition heavy.
Yeah, because of the so much exposition, that's where things become problematic for this film.
Yeah. Now, next up on our character list, we have Kat, who, again, I think she should be the protagonist. She has the most emotional investment in the plot. She has the biggest arc. Her moment of jumping off the boat is the best moment in the film. It's like she realizes it earlier than the audience does, but that this woman who she saw who was so free, that's actually her, and that she can achieve that. Um, yeah, it's just such a great moment, and the fact that it's not the emotional climax of the movie is a real mistake. Yeah, and she might be the best woman Nolan has ever written. Maybe I we'll have to talk about that once we've seen a few more of these because I haven't rewatched some of these in a
I
while.
mean,
But
Nolan.
yeah, yeah, I should say Christopher Nolan, not Jonathan Nolan, because Jonathan Nolan was involved with Westworld, and Westworld has a lot of
Mm-hmm.
good
Mm-hmm.
women characters. But who knows who's writing what for that, and who knows who's writing what for these Nolan movies. Besides the ones that are only written by Christopher Nolan. But yeah, even though she is the best woman character Christopher Nolan has ever written, she's also constantly being the damsel in distress or the battered wife. Like she's still this very cliche character.
Right. Yeah.
I do like I do appreciate that because Elizabeth Debicki, who plays her, is very tall. She's 6'2", which is how tall I am,
Hmm.
and they let her be tall in this. I don't know how much you notice that, but
I noticed she had a long neck at times.
yeah, she like towers over so many of the other characters in a way that's like I want to see her play a villain at some point because she would do very well, and
Hmm.
I think she has in the past. I just haven't seen those films. Or she does play a villain in Guardians of the Galaxy. She's the gold lady.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Well, we all know how that turned
Clearly
out.
recognizable.
Right.
Anyway, next up for characters, we have Neil.
I think Neil is probably my favorite character of the film.
Yeah.
Definitely after this fourth rewatch, I'm like, you know what? I like
Yeah.
Neil. I like Robert Pattinson in this.
Yeah. He's charming and fun. And like the best parts of the movie are when he and the protagonist are working together.
Yeah.
And then you get the stuff on the yacht is so boring, partially because Neil isn't there. Like it's like that entire part on the yacht. I'm like, where's Neil? Why isn't he here? This is boring. Bring
Right.
him back.
Yeah. First time I watched this is like, who's Neil? It's just Robert Pattinson. It's like, okay. Rewatch is like, man, where is Neil?
Yeah. I wish that the relationship between him and the protagonist had been developed a bit more. That we've
Mm-hmm.
gotten, and obviously the point of the movie is, oh, they have this relationship in the past that
Sure.
the protagonist's future.
Yeah.
But why can't we get that movie? Why do we have to watch this one? Why can't we get Neil and the protagonist just kind of palling around doing time travel-y spycraft stuff?
Where did Neil get that little charm on his backpack?
Yeah. I almost wonder if, because this feels like more than any other film that Nolan has made outside of the Batman movies, like this could have a sequel.
Right, yeah.
Not in the sense of like it ends in a cliffhanger, but in the sense of like he's set up enough threads to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wonder if he plans that, or if like because of his relationship with Warner Brothers, that's just off the table.
Who knows? Who knows what he'll do next?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
It'd
mean,
be
maybe
kind
James
of.
Bond.
I mean, maybe James Bond. It'd be kind of interesting. I was thinking about this while watching the film. This film is that it could be kind of interesting if he did something on the John Teeter version of time travel, which is basically what you get in
Okay.
Steins Gate,
Yeah.
which seems right up Nolan's alley. Of just, it's not your basic time travel. It's this
Yeah.
weird world line shenanigan.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan adapting Steins Gate. That would be odd.
Odd, but
I don't know, because that one's too much of a comedy for him, I think.
like not Steins Gate, but like the science behind Steins Gate.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. For Tenet, I just wish they had found a way for Neil to also be on the yacht and just in more of the movie, and just have that relationship. Either tell it from Kat's perspective or develop the relationship. Have it be a buddy movie.
Right, because Neil, because the movie you're talking about from Cat's perspective is really Neil as the protagonist. Because he's the mysterious one who seems to
Yeah,
know all these things to the
yeah,
protagonist. But it's so throwaway.
yeah. There's yeah. Again, Nolan seems to have spent so much time working on the mechanics of the script, but it feels like maybe he should have gone back one more time and just like fleshed out some of the characters a bit more.
Yeah,
Now, speaking of that, we have Sator, who's the villain here.
Satyr. Yeah.
He's mostly pretty flat, but I think it works better when you keep in mind that he's supposed to be a James Bond villain,
Yeah.
not a Christopher Nolan villain.
I mean, Kenneth
Plus,
Branagh does do a good job.
yeah,
The most like threatening you get from him is when he's threatening his wife on the yacht, but that's about
yeah,
it. The rest, like, he's just the same level.
yeah. He's we'll talk about the performance, but yeah, he works as the villain, and I think you kind of need a boring villain because the rest of the movie is so complicated.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. Again, he's a James Bond villain, so I think we can let that slide.
Hmm.
And then most of the other characters here are just kind of there for exposition.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like you have Himish Patel plays Mahir, who is more of like the he's on the field doing random field work, but pretty much everyone else is like, oh, and I guess Ives, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's like a generic military leader type guy.
Hmm.
But yeah, pretty much everyone else is just like, okay, here's exposition. Now go and do something.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, you're back. Here's some more exposition. It does feel very video gamey in that sense of like, here's the level. We're gonna explain what you're gonna do this level. Then they do it, and it's like, okay, your next level is this, and then you do the level, and then and even like even the characters who aren't there just for exposition still have so much exposition
Hmm.
to give. But yeah. Anyway, anything else on the characters before we?
Not so much, no.
Yeah, I give the characters again a 2 out of 5, perhaps ungenerous, but you have two more interesting characters than the protagonist right there, and the movie just kind of fumbles the ball with both of them.
Hmm. Yeah, and I give the characters a 3 out of 5.
So next up, we have the visuals,
Hmm.
and this is where I start to like things a bit more.
This is probably the better part of the film. That's probably what Nolan is trying to do best, is sell this concept visually, which he
Yeah,
does. It looks cool, but the moment you think about it, it's just very confusing. There's this moment that's just really cool where they shoot this building. One team shoots it in the bottom, the other team shoots it in the top, and they explode in two different
yeah.
sections. But the moment you stop and think about why did they do that, like what did that accomplish?
that
Like,
the whole last battle makes like it's just people running around and then some people are running in reverse. There isn't much of a sense for the geography of the battlefield.
yeah, because like once you stop to think about what are they doing, like, I get the idea that there's some bad guys, but like they just shoot down this building. Why? There was no bad guys there, and they didn't
Yeah,
kill any bad guys by shooting the building. It was I played close attention to see what was the point of this spectacle. There was nothing. It was just a spectacle. I loved that spectacle. It looks super cool, but it makes no sense.
yeah. And I think Nolan's response to that would be the don't try and understand it, just feel it. But again, so much of the movie is trying to explain it all to us that like yeah. But anyway, I do think the visuals and what they're able to do with the stunt performances and
Yeah. Oh.
all of that, it's really incredible.
Mhm.
Um,
I really loved the hallway fight. I know that you.
okay,
I really like the hallway fight. I also really liked that they did it in reverse. I know for you it was just like doing the exact same thing twice. But no, I liked seeing the two different sides of it. It gives a different context. The editing is interesting to see.
yeah.
To me, that was fun.
The my issue with the hallway fight this time around is that I don't understand the protagonist's goal in the second half. As in, like, why is he shooting himself?
Yeah, the shooting never really made sense unless
And
it's a warning shot, but
like,
like it's close to his
it
head.
looks it looks really cool when they're going through it forwards, when they're going through the inverted version, it's like what is going on? What is like why is he making the movements that he is making?
And I think it's that he saw the movements and he's just letting his body do the movements. I don't think they ever
Yeah.
explained that. But there's a moment where he he makes his realization when he starts following the movements.
Okay.
And that's when he starts to win the fight, quote unquote win the fight.
Okay.
Which is not done really well to show you that. It took me so many. This is like the fourth or fifth time watching it. I'm like, okay, oh, is that what that's supposed to be? If it's not, then it's just I don't know what's going on. But
Yeah.
it's still a cool fight to watch.
For
And
for me, my eyes start to glaze over a little bit with too much of that.
mm-hmm.
So I do think the bigger sort of set pieces, the crashing the plane into the building, that's cool. Um, I like parts of the heist where they're stealing the plutonium, but that whole operation goes on for way too long, especially since we see it then happen again in reverse. Not the whole thing, but yeah, the
his
last battle looks really good, even though the geography isn't well established or the motivations of different actions.
his stab wound doesn't really make much sense. There's a
Yeah,
moment in that hallway fight in the first time that he gets stabbed, and as we're getting close to his inverted self, getting back to that moment, he starts to bleed as if he got
yeah,
stabbed. But it should, I don't know. From his perspective,
yeah,
he should be bleeding after he got stabbed, not
yeah,
before.
yeah. So he should start the fight bleeding and then end it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
start the fight initially bleeding instead of invertedly bleeding.
yeah.
It's weird.
No,
You know,
yeah.
it's weird.
I do one thing I really like is the industrial aesthetic of everything.
Hmm.
Like it's something you don't tend to see in movies. Sort of more of like here's the bare concrete floors and the just like the lighting hanging down
Hmm.
and then the yacht looks really good. Reminded me a bit of Triangle of Sadness, which takes place partially on a luxury yacht. Though I think that's just all yachts kind of look like that.
The plane going into the building was cool,
Yep.
knowing that that's a real plane into a real building.
Yeah. And I think like the cinematography itself is really impressive.
Of course, like Nolan, great cinematography for sure.
Yeah. And Hoyte van Hoytema.
Hmm.
Should give a shout out to him as well.
Yes, the
Now I
actual
am curious,
cinematographer.
did you notice so I was watching this on DVD. Were you watching it?
I was watching it on Blu-ray.
Okay. Did the aspect ratio change?
I think so.
Okay.
It's
Because
it's it's
this is
hard to
something.
notice. Like I noticed something when I went back to that widescreen.
Yeah.
Um, and like this is gonna be the same thing with Dunkirk. I remember specifically. I noticed the aspect
Okay.
ratio changing in that.
Yeah.
But this one was not as noticeable to me
Okay.
initially.
I noticed it. I didn't notice it last time I watched this on DVD. But yeah, it is they shot certain scenes because the IMAX cameras are big and loud and noisy and expensive.
Hmm.
So they don't use it for every scene. So sometimes they'll just do the standard widescreen. But yeah, it's cool because they don't tend to include that on DVD releases. Like Marvel was making a big deal about, oh, all of the IMAX versions are on Disney Plus now.
But I don't. Are those not true IMAXs? Because IMAXs are.
Well, it's the stuff shot for the IMAX theater with the taller screen.
Right, but even still, you're cutting part of it because isn't it 4:3 for the widescreen?
I think that might be like the most IMAX,
Okay,
like the widest it gets. I'm not 100% sure
because
what
that's
all of
that's
the
what
aspect
Snyder
ratios are.
does for
Okay.
IMAX is 4:3.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it's exactly 4:3 or if it's different. But yeah, I thought it was just kind of neat to see that they had preserved the IMAX aspect ratio on the
Mm-hmm.
physical media. Anything else about the visuals?
I mean, it's cool. It's really the only thing to rewatch this film for. So
Yeah, I gave the visuals a 4.5 out of 5. I think there are some problems. You can definitely see, like, one of my hesitations about this movie getting a sequel is that I don't know how much more they can do with the reverse stuff, because you can tell even like the when characters are walking in the inverted perspective, the actors are having a hard time figuring out where to step.
yeah.
And like that's something that is just going to be difficult to do, and I don't know that they can one up themselves by making another one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I would be curious, but also like you can tell when in certain scenes it's like, okay, yeah, they're running backwards and then it's reversed to make it look like they're running forwards, which is a cool effect.
I
But
don't think
also like,
Nolan wants to reuse the same idea.
yeah, yeah, they would have to come up with something
If
else.
he's done with superhero films, which yeah, makes sense. Like they're
Yeah,
practically the same concept wise, but he doesn't really have any sequels in his repertoire besides them.
yeah. I think this one makes the most sense
Yes.
for a sequel, because it would be like a prequel sequel thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Anyway, visuals 4.5 out of 5
I
for
give it a
me.
4.
Yeah. That's what you see it for. And I do think like for the issues that seeing it on the big screen is has um it looks better on the big screen. But yeah, for performances, we have John David Washington, who are have you seen anything else he's been in?
I don't think I have. No.
Yeah, he is the son of Denzel Washington.
Okay.
And his breakout role was in Spike Lee's Black Klansman, which is a really excellent film. And yeah, he's a bit of a, I don't want to say controversial because that's a bit too harsh, but like some people like him, some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
I've mainly been in the boat of people who like him, but this time I was seeing a little bit of like he gives a very charismatic performance, but it is at times a little bit one note.
And it could just be the way the character is written, of course.
Well, yeah,
He's
the
the
script isn't doing him any
protagonist.
favors
Yeah.
at all.
So
And I don't know that Nolan is known for being able to direct actors to be more charismatic or emotional. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that more, but
mm-hmm.
not like George Lucas levels of cannot direct actors, but like I don't tend to think of him as directing good performances the way like Paul Thomas Anderson or Greta Gerwig do.
He just hires really good actors.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I do wonder if how much of that is John David Washington, because he is also this is his one of his early films since he only started really working in major films in 2018. So, but yeah, I think the reason the character is charming is and charismatic is because of John David Washington's
Mm-hmm.
performance. The script isn't doing him any favors. Now we also have Elizabeth Debicki playing Kat, who we already talked a bit about her. And I just think she knocks it out of the park in every way. She even sells the like annoying cliche damsel in distress stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, her best scene is definitely the scene where she kills Satyr and then jumps off the ship. And that's because the script is finally giving her something to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she still is excellent throughout. Are you familiar with any of her work outside of Guardians of the Galaxy?
I don't think so.
Yeah, she's an Australian actress. Her breakout role was in Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby, where she played Jordan. And that's actually the first movie I saw her in, and I've been a fan of hers ever since. I haven't seen everything she's in, but I've seen
Hmm.
a couple of things. She's probably most well known at this point for playing Princess Diana on The Crown,
Okay.
the Netflix show. Yeah, she is very tall. She is 6'2". Yeah, next up we have Robert Pattinson, who pretty solid performance. He's another one of those people that people tend to either like him as a performer or dislike him as a performer.
Well, most of the dislike really comes from Twilight.
Yeah, there's a lot of leftover. Luckily, I think he has both he and Kristen Stewart have sort of rehabilitated their
I
careers
mean,
after Twilight.
especially after Batman, after the Batman,
Yeah,
he's definitely come back from the Twilight mark. And
yeah,
like in interviews, he's talking about it's like, man, Twilight was such a bad idea for me.
yeah. I think both him and Kristen Stewart. Now, I haven't read the books, but I've heard that they're actually playing the characters very closely to what is written
Hmm.
in Twilight. It's just that what is written is kind of annoying. So it ends up being, but it is, Robert Pattinson has been able to he's after Twilight he started working with art house directors on small movies, just like whatever he could get. Worked with like David Cronenberg, Robert Eggers, and then yeah, then he got the Batman and kind of completely changed the image of him. And of course, Tenet also
Yeah,
helped with that.
Tenet's probably the first film I saw him in outside of Twilight. So,
Okay. Well, he was also in one of the Harry Potters.
well, that too. Yeah,
But
I forget about
yeah,
that.
that's that's way long ago.
Wasn't that before Twilight though?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, he's really charming in this,
mm-hmm.
which is weird because that's not usually the vibe he goes for in his performances.
Right.
Usually he's going a bit weirder or emo like the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I'm wondering if you had this issue, and this is something also when I saw The Lighthouse. I also had an issue with his voice just sounding a little bit off, like a little
Like the
bit
accent or the way that he's speaking.
both. It's like a little too mannered, like he's trying a little too hard to hit a specific voice.
I've, I mean, I didn't really catch it, but like English is American English is not his natural accent. So,
Well, he's doing a British accent.
is he? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know. Maybe he's not
yeah.
naturally charming, and
Well, here's the thing though, because for me it doesn't ruin the performance, but it is something that like, and I've noticed it in The Lighthouse where he's playing an American character, in The Devil All the Time where he's playing an American character, and then in The King where he's playing a French character, where it's just like there's something a little bit off about his performances, not in a way that like ruins the performances for me, but I'm like not quite as positive on him as other people are. But then in the Batman, I think everything except for the occasional Bruce Wayne scene he's doing incredible in.
Well, let's be honest. Like, how can I notice if I can't hear any line of dialogue in this film? We'll
Yeah,
talk
that's
about that
fair.
next, but you
Yeah,
know.
and I think part of why I'm bumping against his performance here is also the dialogue, the way it's written is a lot of exposition.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like his performance here. I don't want to sound too off on his performance. I was just wondering if you caught on to
Yeah,
anything
no,
with
I
the
didn't
voice or
call
if
him.
that's
But yeah, for
just a me
me,
problem.
he's the best part of the film for me. Like
Oh
him
yeah,
with the protagonist
yeah,
interacting for sure.
I think he and Elizabeth Debicki are giving the best of the sort of major performances here.
Mm-hmm.
Now we also have Kenneth Branagh, who is he's his career is really interesting because he has been director, writer, actor, pretty much every role. I think he has either has or is tied with the record for the most Oscar nominations in different categories. I think he's been nominated in 7 different categories over the course of his career, both acting, directing, screenwriting, a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's also worked with Nolan before. He worked with him on Dunkirk and then actually was also in Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
Sort of, I've heard people suggest that he might be the new Michael Caine for Christopher Nolan,
maybe.
just like British actor who shows up for a couple of scenes,
Especially now that Michael Caine is not doing well.
retired.
Yeah, retired.
Yeah, but yeah, he's hamming it up, but as much as you can ham it up in a Nolan movie.
Hamming it up.
Yeah, just like
Eh, him hamming it up is in Harry Potter.
yeah, that's more so. This is like hamming it up for a Christopher Nolan movie,
Sure.
which would register as a normal performance in any other movie, but because it's a Christopher Nolan movie, it feels very big.
Okay.
And yeah, he is threatening in a couple of the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's just a Bond villain. He's playing a Bond villain.
Yep. Not much to him besides that.
Yeah, I did also want to briefly talk about Dimple Kapadia. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but she's an Indian actress who's primarily known for her work in Hindi films. But she's playing Priya, the Indian arms dealer here, and I think she is of the actors who have to do a lot of exposition. She does the best at it.
Probably, yeah.
She makes her scenes sing despite how heavy on the science and plot mumbo jumbo they are. Like she makes you feel the weight of the exposition. And I mean Michael Caine can do that as well, but with her since she's in so much of more of the movie, I felt it more.
Mm-hmm.
Now she does have a pretty thick accent, and apparently Nolan doesn't like to do ADR, and they're filming a lot of scenes where they're on crowded streets or in crowded places.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, that means that some of her lines are difficult to hear. But watching it with subtitles, it wasn't an issue, and it's not as bad as Aaron Taylor Johnson with his breathing mask and heavy accent
Mm-hmm.
going.
I mean, yeah. So it's better. The DVD watching on DVD and Blu-ray, the audio is so much better than it was in theaters, but it's still not good.
No, with her lines, I think it's good enough that, like, okay, I can now understand her lines, especially with the subtitles. With Aaron Taylor Johnson, it's still like,
Yeah, I got that. I read the subtitles too.
there were so many moments with Aaron Taylor Johnson's character where I was like, what? I don't know that those are words. I think those are just noises.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's Bane.
It is Bane, but with Bane, they made him re record the dialogue.
Yep.
Here, they're just like, since he wasn't in any of the marketing, none of the audience could complain about it until after the movie was already out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, what is this guy saying? And he's saying important plot things. And it sounds like.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, not to be too down on Aaron Taylor Johnson, who I think is a fine actor, but more a Nolan not doing ADR.
I don't think ADR was the problem for this film, but yeah.
I-
ADR is important.
ADR would have been part of the solution.
Well, I mean, does he at least do wild takes?
I have no idea.
Because ADR, I can understand it if he does wild takes, but ADR,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think he records what they say on set.
That's probably what it is.
And I don't know that anything except for ADR would make some of the lines intelligible. Because they're in crowded places.
Wow.
Or loud places, on boats with heavy score, and everyone's wearing a mask and everyone has a thick accent. And yeah, I gave the performances a 4.5 out of 5. They're not the issue with the movie, and I think some of them are quite good.
Yeah, and I gave it a 4 out of 5.
So yeah, last up we have the music, and I think for the Nolan series we're gonna fold sound into the music category.
Well, let's start with the audio before we get to music.
Yeah.
So, the biggest problem with this film is, of course, the audio mixing.
Yeah.
Specifically, the leveling of just the dialogue under everything. It's so quiet, and it's so quiet, and then the the music is so loud that's like, I don't want to constantly change the volume with my remote so I can hear the dialogue and then die when loud stuff happens. And so I just have to listen very closely or just read the subtitles, know what they're saying. That's it's really bad. And the reason why is this bad because Nolan mixes everything just for IMAX, like the best IMAX theaters,
Yeah.
and doesn't care about the rest. But you really should try.
Oh yeah.
They do it like I mentioned that the DVDs and Blu-rays, they're much better. You can hear slightly more, but that's slightly. Yeah, no, the theater was terrible. Like I couldn't hear anything. It was so bad.
When I saw it at my school, which their sound system isn't even as good for like movie watching as a theater, so you couldn't hear half of the dialogue.
Yeah.
Whereas, on the DVD I could hear a solid like 75% of the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Although that was with subtitles, so that obviously helps a lot.
I don't care about the excuse of oh well, they're only having you listen to the dialogue if it's important, but it's like, no, that's not it. That's only
that's not true.
That's just one scene of the film. What about the rest of the film, guys?
Yeah, because that is, when they're having the tour of the Freeport,
mm-hmm.
and the score is going wild, then it's like, okay, yeah, well, this isn't important. But it's Aaron Taylor Johnson explaining the whole point of the mission by going
right. Yes. or every other line of dialogue in the film.
Yeah, what I'm gonna do for this podcast to replicate the experience is I'm gonna underlay just like ship noises behind everything, and then I'll add some like big score moments to drown out our voices at different times.
Yes. I'm glad that they learned most of their lesson with Oppenheimer. They
Yeah,
make it.
Oppenheimer is so much better.
Yes, it's only when loud stuff is happening that you don't hear.
Yeah.
Here it's nothing is happening, and yet I can't hear.
Yeah. As for like the actual like the sound effects are great
Yeah.
because you can actually hear them.
Mm-hmm.
The score, I like the score. I know you're less a fan of the
So
score.
I like the idea of the score, of making the score sound similar enough where you can, because Warner Brothers, they released the score inverted, so
Yeah.
backwards, and it sounds similar, and it's cool. I like that idea. It's cool, but because of that, it's just not much to it. It's the
Yeah.
same beats like or brr, brr, with your basic electronic underneath it all. And it's just for a Nolan score. Like Nolan scores are amazing in other films. Like I listened to the Oppenheimer score, fantastic.
Yeah.
Usually there's usually like a really good track in each film. This one, they all sound the same. It is just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I liked it, though I will admit that by the end of the movie I was getting a little bit tired of the score.
Right. Like I was really craving some something unique and like
Yeah, so something quieter and less.
it's just I want a character motif, I want a theme. Like what we have here, it's fine. It works for the action, what's going on. It helps build the tension when the cars are coming in for that
Yeah.
heist. But outside of that, there's not much memorable about it. You don't remember the score.
Yeah.
Only the fact that it's like, oh, it's made for this specific idea. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, I gave the sound again. I like the score, so I feel kind of bad for this, but
Oh,
because of the mixing, I've dropped my score down a
okay.
whole lot.
So
I
so
give it a 1.5 out of 5.
okay. So we're also doing sound in general in this
Yeah.
score.
I
Okay.
feel like because for the Barbie movies, the sound was never
Okay.
notable enough to have it as its own category. Whereas here
And I'll do that.
for the Nolan films, I think we kind of have to talk about the sound,
Okay. Yeah, that
both
makes
the good
sense.
and the bad.
So that means my score is being dropped down to a 2 because the score, while even though I don't love it, I think it's fine. It does its job.
Yeah,
I like the idea of it. And so that's why it at least goes up to a 2.
yeah,
But yeah,
and
no, the mixing is the worst part of this film for sure.
yeah, yeah, and this leaves me with a final score of 14.5 out of 25, which is a 58% or a 2.9 on our 5-star scale. Which, yeah,
And I have a
disappointing.
16, which is a 64% or a 3.25 star rating, which is probably how I feel about this film in general. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you rated the lows higher than I did, and I rated the highs higher than you did here. But we still ended up with very similar scores
I mean,
and similar thoughts as well.
the music I was lower than you, but because the sound thing,
Yeah,
you I guess you forgot that the music was good.
yeah, I like the music, but the sound has so many other issues that I'm just like,
Yeah, no.
but yeah, I think we haven't put together an official spreadsheet for our rankings, so I can't look at that right now. But
hmm
this definitely falls beneath Oppenheimer in our rankings by quite a bit.
We didn't really do sound for Oppenheimer, but I don't think
No,
much would change.
yeah, So yeah, but before we wrap up, I did want to make an announcement that we are going to start doing an extra 2 bonus episodes a week. Just because we're binging Barbie, so even though we're covering Christopher Nolan, I still want to cover some Barbie stuff here. So later this month, we will be talking about the Toys That Made Us episode on Barbie. That probably won't be a review so much as a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then starting next month, we will be working through the Barbie TV shows, starting with Barbie Life in the Dream House. We'll be taking it a few episodes at a time. We'll get more information out as the date draws closer as well for anyone who wants to watch along with us. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are Binging Barbie Podcast on Instagram, at Binging Barbie on Twitter, and Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd. You can find an up to date list of all of our rankings there. And next week, we'll be talking about Dunkirk, again, going backwards through Christopher Nolan's films. So that's up next on the docket here. Yeah, look forward to seeing you then. Thank you all for listening. Bye.